I want to talk to you about something called exegetical fallacies. Now, it's a complex topic in relationship to the study of Scripture, but I'm going to explain it in a simplified manner so you can grasp it. Exegetical fallacies refer to errors or mistakes that can occur when we interpret and seek to understand biblical texts. These fallacies distort the true meaning of the text and hinder our ability to accurately understand and apply the message of the text to our lives. Now, there are well over 20 exegetical fallacies, but I only want to focus on three because these three are far more common, in my estimation, than we care to admit in the current popular church culture. One is called proof texting. Proof texting is an exegetical fallacy that involves taking a verse or a passage out of its original context and using it to support a preconceived idea or agenda. We're hearing that kind of stuff a lot lately. We're making Jesus say things from the first century church to the 21st century church that totally have nothing to do with what Jesus meant. We're neglecting the surrounding verses and the intention of the text itself and the historical and cultural context in which the text was written. And if we don't know that, we're off to an unhealthy start in terms of how we interpret the text. That's one of the reasons Paul says to Timothy, study to show yourself approved. There's also an exegetical fallacy from a Greek word called eisegesis. Well, what is eisegesis? Eisegesis happens when we read our own ideas or biases. We project them into the text instead of allowing the text to speak for itself. It involves interpreting the text based on our assumptions and beliefs rather than seeking to understand what the text intends to convey. I've often said to people, don't merely read the scriptures, let them read you. We have to own our biases and our tendency to project onto all sorts of things, including the text, our own personal preferences. But it's an exegetical fallacy. And then there's one called cherry picking. That fallacy involves selectively choosing certain verses or passages while ignoring others that may provide a broader or balanced perspective. Thomas Jefferson had a Bible where he eliminated all the passages he didn't like and kept the ones that he did. All of that leads to an imbalanced understanding of the biblical message and overlooks important themes as well as teachings. Beloved, to avoid any of those three fallacies, and by the way, if you want to study exegetical fallacies, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's important to approach scriptural interpretation with humility, seeking to understand the context, the historical context in which those texts were written, the background of all of that, the manners and customs, the intent of what the text is endeavoring to convey, and the overall message of the passage itself, which is more than just a verse. Those verses were added in the 13th century. And the texts, some of them go back 3,000 years. And so studying historical and cultural backgrounds, literary genre, in other words, the Psalms are poems. The book of Job is a poem. The Proverbs are aphorisms. Paul's letters are abstractions of areas of applying the story of Jesus to practical living. The Gospels are the story of Jesus. So the literary genre all comes with a way in which you have to learn how to read it. Now listen, there are reliable commentaries and resources that you and I can go to discover how to appropriately approach the sacred text. In addition, listen carefully, we need to seek guidance from trusted, well-trained and well-equipped and well-spiritually formed teachers and pastors who can help us developing a well-rounded understanding of Scripture. Today, we're more interested in wordsmiths that can turn a phrase, but it doesn't mean they actually do theology well. They will have to answer to God for that on the day of judgment. James warns of that. Ultimately, The goal is to accurately discern and apply the intended message of a scriptural text in the way we live our lives today. Study to show yourself approved.